During an interview last night, a Newsmax host and Chris Christie got into a heated back and forth over Trump and his legal troubles. I want to take a look at a bit of an interview on Eric Bolling's show on Newsmax with Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie. He does a really good job of shutting down Eric Bolling's nonsense talking points in favor of Trump. And before getting into that, a lot of times when I do these sorts of segments about Chris Christie making good points about the reasons Trump shouldn't be president, I have people in the audience say, why are you ignoring Chris Christie's past enabling of Trump? Which of course, I'm not. I think you can acknowledge good points being made by people who likely are opportunists. And in this moment in particular, it's so important that we define at least two distinct Republican categories: extreme MAGA Republicans and then your other more normal Republicans. Because we can have a functioning democracy with still huge disagreements and policy battles if it were just Chris Christie's on the other side of the aisle. We can't have that with Trump's on the other side of the aisle. And that distinction, I think, is super important. But in this segment, after watching the Newsmax moment, I will show you a voter actually confronting Chris Christie at a recent event over his past enabling of Trump. And a super interesting back and forth ensues. With that being said, in this clip, the context is before the part that you watched, Eric Bolling asked Chris Christie why he attacks Trump so much and says, you know, your poll numbers aren't good. Why don't you try to chill a little bit and not attack Trump so much? And here was the exchange.
And that's Donald Trump. And by the way, the reason I make that case is not just because I want to win, but I want our party to win. And he will not beat Joe Biden from, a courtroom in Washington, D.C. when he's being tried for crimes. And now, Eric, his own chief of staff has signed up to testify against him. Not some, woke prosecutor, not some crazy Democrat from the Justice Department. Mark Meadows, one of the founders of the Freedom Caucus, and his chief of staff is going to testify that Donald Trump committed crimes and instructed him to commit crimes. Mark Meadows, you would call him a hero weeks ago. Come on. Don't interrupt me when I start to say things that make people uncomfortable.
I'm just a numbers guy. I'm just a numbers guy. It's insurmountable. Let's be honest. It is insurmountable to overtake Donald Trump by any of these people, unless, of course, something dramatic happens with Trump in his personal life, being convicted of something or worse.
Nothing dramatic could possibly happen in Donald Trump's life. I'm not a numbers guy, by the way, Eric. I'm a character guy. And I think we deserve better as the Republican Party and as the United States than a guy who's going to be convicted of felonies this April to be our nominee and to try to be our president.
By a bunch of liberal Democrats that are trying to take him down because they fear him.
No.
Guess what? If Chris Christie was 53%,
not by a bunch of liberal Democrats.
They probably have your butt in the courtroom too.
No, I'm not going to put up with you saying that. He's going to be convicted by Mark Meadows, a founder of the Freedom Caucus, and his chief of staff, who he called the next James Baker. That guy is now testifying and will sit 20 feet away from Donald Trump in a courtroom, taking an oath and saying he committed crimes and he directed others to commit crimes, including me. That's what he's going to say.
All right.
And that's not some woke prosecutor. That's not some group of liberals. That's a guy who founded the Freedom Caucus in the House, a Republican from North Carolina, and his choice for chief of staff. Eric, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a character guy. And when Mark Meadows gets on that stand, everything I've been saying about Donald Trump that you've been making fun of me about for months is going to wind up being true.
This ridiculous idea that this is all some liberal scheme against Trump falls apart when you look at all the people involved. You have a Trump-appointed judge in one of the cases. You have an independent prosecutor. You have former Trump lawyers testifying against him. You have his former chief of staff, etc. And Eric Bolling trying to wave away a potential conviction with, that'll just be liberals who hate Trump and don't want him to become president again, shows me honestly how little Eric Bolling thinks of his own audience. Because if you really give that any thought, how on earth does anyone think it would work out that every juror in every jury that Trump goes in front of in multiple states, including in Florida, will be some hardcore Biden fan? It makes no sense. But people actually believe that. They believe somehow it's more reasonable to assume every prosecutor, every judge, every juror, every witness, everyone is a part of the most advanced conspiracy in American history to take Trump down. And somehow there's just no evidence of it. And that's more reasonable than, hey, maybe Trump just did some things that were against the law, which is a much simpler explanation, I might add. Occam's razor. Hundreds of people are working together to take Trump down, or Trump just did some stuff that now he's being held accountable for. And let's not forget, there's actual damning evidence being brought against Trump, which hosts like Eric Bolling refuse to contend with. With that being said, while Chris Christie is speaking truth when it comes to Trump, I do think it's still important to put into context his record, because Trump was able to get as far as he did due to the enabling of people like Chris Christie before he started running for president this go round. And here's an audience member at one of his recent events who says that he worked within the federal government, then lost his job for speaking out against Trump, and he presses Chris Christie about his past enabling of Trump.
I have worked in the federal government for nearly 25 years. I worked for Homeland Security. I took a stand when President Trump was elected. I didn't like what was going on within that department. I did what I was asked to do as a federal employee, speak truth to power. Governor, I was fired for blowing the whistle on national security issues. I lost my family, okay? But I didn't lose my dignity. Sir, you were part of that administration. As much as I want to be there for you now, how can I be here? How can I cast a ballot for you when you were an enabler? I'm sorry, but that's,
okay.
That's
I
the
think
word.
you got the question.
I think
now?
I got the gist.
Yeah.
Look, elections are choices. And I made a choice in 2016 that I didn't want Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States. And I tried to beat Donald Trump in the primary. I want you to remember, he was not my first choice to be president. I was my first choice. That didn't work out. But it was a mistake. I don't know. I don't know how old you are. You look about my age. I don't know if you've never made any mistakes in your life. I suspect you probably have. I think the difference is, do you admit your mistakes? And you know, anybody else who claims a purity test on any issue politically in our country, be happy to have the conversation with you and see if you pass it. But I think what matters more is once you realize you've made a mistake, what do you do about it? I'm not standing up there trying to cozy up to him. I'm not standing there trying to rationalize his conduct. I'm not standing there saying I'm going to pardon him or I'd support him if he were a convicted felon. So, yeah, if it's a purity test, I think that the majority, the overwhelming majority of our party will fail it. But
No, you cannot. No, you cannot.
I can't get in a debate today, but if you qualify, get 80,000 donors, I'll get you on the stage and I'll debate you then.
We'll get to one other Chris Christie clip in just a bit, but first to respond to that, I do think there's truth to saying it's important to be able to admit your mistakes. But let's not forget that Chris Christie helped Trump debate prep against Biden in 2020. So he was referencing Hillary, and we're talking about 2020. Christie says the turning point for him was all of Trump's lies about our democracy. But by that debate, by that point in time, Trump was already preemptively saying the election was going to be stolen if he didn't win. He wouldn't commit to the peaceful transfer of power. And again, Chris Christie was helping Trump prepare for that debate against Joe Biden. That's a level of support that few people give to a candidate. And by the way, that debate prep room is where it seems Trump gave Chris Christie COVID and nearly killed him. So I think even though I'm willing to give credit to Mike Pence, for example, for what he did on January 6th, and Chris Christie for his accurate criticisms of Trump, and we do have to create an environment where people feel comfortable coming to the right side of history, at least on the issue of Trump. We do want to encourage that. It's also fair to treat people like adults and say, hey, we all saw how dangerous his lies were long before you were willing to speak out against them. And why did it take you so long? Again, it's not that people can't change their minds and be affirmed for doing so, but the opportunism can also be called out. And judgment can be cast when people helped to get us to where we are and then now are willing to say, maybe it would be good if we weren't here. Right. With all that being said, here is a really good moment from the speech that preceded the clip we just watched, again from Chris Christie.
As president, I will lead with purpose and strength. and continue to tell the truth. You see, if you lie about what's going on inside the country, you have no credibility when you try to communicate what's going on around the world and why that calls us to sacrifice. If you lie fundamentally about the menace that Donald Trump is, then you have no credibility in describing the menace that Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or Kim Jong-un or the mullahs in Iran are. If you are unwilling to stand up to someone in your own country, in your own party, if you're willing to call them the right president at the right time, if you're willing to say that I'd be inclined to pardon him, if you're willing to stand on a debate stage in front of millions of Americans and raise your hand and say, I'd support him even if he was a convicted felon, what credibility do you have to talk to the rest of the world about moral clarity?
And that's absolutely correct. I really hope we remember, after Trump fades out of political relevance, all the people who lost their credibility in support of him. If you can stand by all of his lies about so many different subjects, especially our democracy, then you've shown yourself to have a complete lack of credibility. And all of the Republicans that do support Trump are a global humiliation. We're going to talk about a piece in a different segment today from The Economist that outlines the damage Trump would do, not just to the country, but to the world if he became president again after the 2024 election. The world is terrified of a second Trump term and is not looking kindly upon all of the Republican leaders who are afraid to go against Trump. So like we're doing with Chris Christie, when inevitably these Republicans want to disavow their support for Trump and, oh, that never happened, we're not going to forget. We'll encourage them to be sane, affirm that, but we're not going to forget it. Before you go, don't forget to become a member at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership to get access to the daily bonus show Monday through Friday. Plus, follow me on Threads at Luke Beasley Official, Instagram at Luke Beasley Official, X at Luke P. Beasley, and sign up for the Beasley Brief, a daily morning newsletter that summarizes the previous day's events by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/brief. And I'll talk to you all next time.